Oh, okay. Wait for the sign. Good afternoon, everybody. This is DayQuest Life Radio. It's 3:06 in the afternoon somewhere, and we're here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I am so excited today to be here with my guest, Christina Bellamy. You are listening to DayQuest Life Radio on WSPF-DB. That's rhinoonair.com, your favorite friendly internet radio station. My name is Michael Whalen, and I'm your host for the day, for the hour. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of really neat, wonderful, powerful things. Everything from composting and gardening and ecology and the environment to the world inside the prison system and a lot of things in between. So I'm really very, very happy and proud and privileged to be here with Christina. Christina Bellamy, M.A., is a retired psychotherapist and trainer here in Florida. And Christina has a vitae that if I read it, we would be into the next show. So I'm going to be picking out some highlights. I'll tell you that the first time that I met Christina was at a training she was giving at the Franciscan Center over in Tampa. And the name of that training was Spirituality and Nature. And of course, the connection between spirituality and nature was the topic. And I remember that you asked us to draw and color a tree as part of the exercise. And we went out and meditated and such. And I was just so struck with Christina's ability to touch something deep inside of me that she allowed to come out. She created permission for me to get in touch with that side of myself that was connected to earth. And I drew this beautiful tree. I didn't know that I could even do such a thing. It looked so nice. I mean, it looked great. And I had that tree for a long time, and it really spoke to me about my connection with earth and the centering of spirit in nature. And I know that I've been influenced by that exercise and still am. And so Christina has created hundreds and hundreds of workshops throughout the country. She's volunteered with the Alternatives to Violence Project in Coleman Prison, and we're going to be talking about her work there. And she has presented at the Bridge in Tampa, an organization that is dedicated to sustainability. She works with and for the Tampa Bay Time Bank. She's a part of the Living Mirror Playback Theater, and we might find more out about that. She works as a volunteer gardener at Faith House. Let me see here. She's offered training at various conferences, the Florida School of Addiction Studies, Florida Association for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Counselors, International Doctors in AA, the American Society for Group Psychotherapy and Psychodrama, Alternatives to Violence Project, as I said, Tampa Bay Family Conference, PACE Annual Girl Power Summit. She's taught at Eckerd College here in St. Petersburg, St. Leo College, University of South Florida, Hillsborough Community College, St. Petersburg Community College, various high schools. And also I see that she has taught classes in ecology at the Omega Institute and many ecology-oriented classes and workshops, women in nature, ecology and psychodrama, composting, and the joy and benefits of composting. So spirituality and gardening and many, many others. I'm just so pleased. I could go on. I'm so pleased to be here with Christina Bellamy.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Welcome,
My goodness.
Christina.
You never know where our friendship is going to end up, and here we are on the radio together.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't this great?
I feel the need to amend one of the things that you said.
Sure.
I did not teach a class officially at Omega Institute, like in the catalog and all that.
Right, right.
I was on the garden team there, and if you've ever been to Omega, you know the gardens are a huge part of that place. And I was one of the gardeners, and it occurred to me that the participants at Omega were constantly interrupting us and asking us questions. So
Right.
because I love to teach, I asked administration if I could have a little class every day at 5 o'clock, and everybody could all come together in the garden and ask questions all at once, which was more efficient, and that's what I did.
Okay. So it was a real spontaneous and impromptu kind of thing that became more of a formal, kind of informal workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful.
And one of the things I remember as a highlight about that, a man came from New York City. He lived on, I don't know, the 30th floor of some enormous residential place in New York City. He wanted to smell the dirt. So I reached down into the garden and I put a handful of dirt under his nose, and he smelled it and he burst into tears.
Wow.
He had never smelled dirt.
Amazing.
Good, rich,
Yeah.
composted dirt.
Wow.
And he said, there's something wrong with my life that I've never had this experience before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what he did with that, but I remember that as one of the amazing highlights of just connecting people like you and your tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly that speaks to the power of that connection, and that he recognized that in that moment, and what welled up inside of him was the sadness of not connecting, maybe the joy of connecting, who knows
Probably,
what all that was.
Probably all of the above, but
Right,
his body got it.
Yes, right. Every
He
part
was a
of
very
him
bright guy, and
knew
his
this.
mind was getting all kinds of something
Mhm.
at one of the classes at Omega, but his body had an experience.
Mhm.
And it was wonderful.
So it talks to me about how important it really is to be connected and to create somehow, some way to get that experience with the sights, the smells, the sounds, the feel, the touch, the exchange that comes.
You remember
with nature.
Ram Dass?
Ram Dass.
Yes.
Yes, I remember here and now guy.
He was on the board of Omega, and they were having a board meeting, and he was walking out to his car to leave, and he saw me in the garden, and he came over and tapped me on the shoulder. I was thinning beets or something, and he said, I'm a guy from Brooklyn. I don't know anything about shovels. Would you teach me how to learn to use a shovel?
Really?
Yes. So I said, sure, Rob does. So for about the next 20 minutes, and he was very bad at it in the beginning, almost fell over. He got better, and he also had a really great experience in the dirt.
Wow.
Behind a shovel for the first time in his entire life.
So let me ask you, you have this gift for connecting people through the dirt, so to speak. When, this is a question that I like to ask everyone, which is, what spoke to you? How did you know? When did you first sort of get this feeling that connecting with the earth was so important to you and was a part of maybe what you would call your calling?
It's a big part of it, and I was very small. I don't remember any particular day or experience, but I know that when things got, shall we say, difficult in our family household, I would always go outside and go behind the garden wall where there was a compost pile. and I would hunker down next to the compost pile, and I would feel safe because I sometimes didn't feel safe in the house. So that, from a very young age, was a visceral experience for me. And also my parents were gardeners, but chemical gardeners. I'm an organic gardener. And they never argued in the garden. They argued constantly in the house, never in the garden.
So there was something sacred.
Something was going on there. I probably couldn't have articulated it when I was young, but the minute I moved out of that house at age 19, when I got married, I wanted to garden.
Yeah. Wow. So I get this image of you, crouched down next to the compost pile with the beautiful organic smells, and maybe there was a little warmth coming off of the pile in my imagination.
Yeah, in Detroit in the wintertime, that would have been important.
That might have been important, yeah.
And sometimes there were too many grass clippings on the pile, and it wouldn't smell so wonderfully earthy. You'd get kind of a methane gas smell, which I didn't know at the time. But there was something very significant about that. And many other things. I remember making paths in the snow in the backyard, making games out of the snow, and sometimes doing it by myself, sometimes bringing other kids into it. Almost everything I did on my off time, when I wasn't doing schoolwork or something, was outside, almost all of it. So it goes way back.
A great healing place, but not only a great healing place, but also just play.
A very fun place.
Right. Okay. And then moving forward, you eventually became a licensed mental health counselor.
Many years later.
Many years later.
I am what we affectionately call a late bloomer.
Well, I'm with you in that group. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 25 years of my adult life, and had 3 kids, and was very active in the community with, we had a recycling center from 1970, from the first Earth Day on.
Wow.
I taught outdoor education at a land lab run by the county and the public schools. And it was in an old munitions property, which was an interesting place to have a land lab for 5th graders. I had a Girl Scout troop that was the biggest in our area, and they did all kinds of outdoor activities and creative activities. I did a lot of really interesting stuff.
Yeah, nurturing and community oriented.
Big time.
Both.
Big time. Because the Rust Belt was starting to go down the end of the 70s, and the area was very beleaguered economically. And so I made a point of finding all the interesting people. Retired foresters, the great school teachers, the inspiring union leaders. I mean, anybody who was doing something to brighten up that town, which was hurting bad.
Was there somebody when you were young who inspired you to do these kinds of things? Was there somebody that you modeled, that would reach out in the community, or?
That's a great question, and I can see it now. I wouldn't have seen it then, but my uncle, whose name was Robert Muir, my mother's Robert Muir. We were of
Scott name for the outdoors, right?
Yes. I used to lie and claim he was a relative, but he wasn't. But my uncle was, and he was my mother's younger brother, and he became an Episcopal priest and had a storefront ministry in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And if you know Roxbury, back then, I don't know what it is now, but it was a very economically challenged area outside of Boston. And he had a storefront ministry and a newspaper, and Senator McCarthy in the 50s, you're a little too young for this, called him a communist. And within 24 hours, he was thrown out of his calling.
Wow.
He lost his family, he lost his job, he lost his career, he lost everything. And we weren't allowed to speak his name because my family, but it was very conflicted. It was a problem. So I used to ride my bike home as fast as I could from school to watch the hearings on the little black and white TV.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't allowed to watch television in the daytime, but I needed to see what McCarthy was doing. So all that kind of came together for me when I was 10.
Wow. Yeah. I'm guessing that I'm wondering if it was a sense of betrayal from and trying to understand what the government was doing to your
Yeah.
uncle, you know?
Yeah, and because our family was so, shall we say, how can I politely say, people didn't come visit much to our family.
Okay.
So I didn't know him well,
I
and
see.
he lived up in Boston, we were in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So he just disappeared and couldn't speak to his kids. I mean, it was really dreadful.
They're very
And
horrible. Really
McCarthy
tragic.
did that to a lot of people.
Yeah. Right.
And I honestly thought he had died because nobody spoke of him.
Mhm.
And then 36 years later, he petitioned the Bishop of the state of Massachusetts to be reinstated in the Episcopal Church as a priest. And I found him and reunited with him, and it was very emotional and very wonderful, because he clearly had been this kind of unspoken figure
Yeah.
who had a lot of power for me.
Mm-hmm.
And his first assignment as a reinstated Episcopal priest was on the island of St. Vincent. And the first thing he did was find out that in the jails, if you were a prostitute or a woman of no means and you'd been picked up and incarcerated, you were prey to the jailers. They would rape the women, harass them sexually. It was very bad. So he went in at age 82 and slept on the floor of the St. Vincent's jail and said, if you're going to get to these women, you have to walk over my body.
My goodness.
Yeah.
What a hero.
That was his first assignment.
What a hero.
And then he became an interim, and that's when I met him after all that. And he told me those stories. Very inspiring.
So I'd just like to take a moment to honor your uncle,
Mm-hmm.
Robert
Muir.
Muir.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, he was named after his father, and his father disowned him when all this happened in the church, and said, I have 2 daughters. I never had a son. And that's how he died.
Terrible birth.
Yeah.
Terrible wounding that occurred.
Yeah, it was a different time, and those things still happen today. But I think a lot more of it happened back then.
Well, it's good. It's a good story to hear. I mean, unfortunately, it's a terrible, tragic story, but it's also a good story to hear. We don't hear. I've never met anybody who had a direct connection with anything to do with McCarthy. But it is a good reminder about how that kind of power can be abused and how devastating and how quickly your life can change, about how quickly this power can amass and that people can get behind these ideas based on fear.
And this was before the internet, remember?
Yeah.
We didn't have voicemail. We didn't have we didn't have computers. We didn't have any of that. It was the
Radio and
50s.
television at that time.
Radio
yeah,
and-
still
and
a
not
mass
everybody
media of some sort.
Our first TV was when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
So despite the limited communication, it got out there very quickly.
Right. Yeah. So there is a thread here that I've just realized, and that is the thread of your uncle going to protect and be with and improve the lives of women in prison.
Oh, you're good.
And
Uh-huh.
that's one of the major pieces of work that you have been doing for a long time at the Coleman prison in Florida.
Coleman, Florida, which is a couple gas stations. They put federal prisons out where nobody, if you escape, you have a lot of ditches to cross.
Well, you're just going to stand out a little
Yes.
bit before you can blend
That's
into
right.
the urban area, right?
And this Coleman is the largest federal correctional facility in the country. They have
The largest
8,000.
federal in the country.
8,000 men and women are incarcerated at Coleman. It's 60 miles north of Tampa. And every single person I've ever said that to in the last 13 years I've been going there says, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's right under our radar. They have 2 penitentiaries of 1,600 men each. They have a men's medium facility that's about, I think, 2,300 men. They have a men's minimum security facility, and then the women's camp of 500 women, which is now today officially 50% Hispanic. It used to be probably more 50% African American women. There's still a lot of women of African American, but people of color are disproportionately represented there.
Yeah. So tell us about your work. Just a minute before we do that, let me remind our listeners that we're talking with Christina Bellamy on WSPF-DB, rhinoonair.com.
Okay.
And this is Dayquest Life radio show. And I'm Michael Whalen, your host. Okay, got it all in.
All right, very good.
So how did you get into, what drew you to working in the prisons?
Well,
besides your uncle?
Sometimes, I didn't see that connection at all back when I started. I certainly began to see it later, and I'm glad you caught it because it is significant for me. I got into the prison work through beginning with Alternatives to Violence Project because a dear friend of mine, Marty Newbold, who is back in St. Pete, said to me, you have to do this thing. And I said, Marty, what is this thing? And she said, well, there's a workshop. It's called ABP. I'm not even going to explain it to you. I know you're going to love it. No, I need a little more than that to go 3 days, to be inside for 3 days for a training. And
inside for you for 3 days must be not easy. Yeah.
That sounded like torture. And so after a few hours, I got that she was right, that I absolutely loved it and I wanted to learn more. And I literally felt pulled along by what the program has to offer.
Okay. And when you're being pulled along, I'd just like to get an idea of that sense in your body. What is that like in your body when you're getting pulled along by something like that?
Feels good. If you stick me inside behind a desk, it does not feel good. Unless I'm doing something fun on the computer or working with a group of people or something. I'm even willing to be in prison for 3 days because I'm with amazing women who are incarcerated there. We've also done ABP with the penitentiary, with the second penitentiary, and I love that. A couple named Susan and Daryl Hefty brought ABP to Tampa Bay in, I believe it was 2000, maybe 2001. I took the second workshop that they offered after Marty gave me the heads up. And then we started going to Coleman Prison in 2002. And Daryl Hefty and I, because you needed a man to go into the penitentiary, we began doing ABP with the men incarcerated there. And we took a group of 13 guys who were handpicked through the process of the 3 workshops, and then they became our core trainers. I felt safer with those women, or with those men. I felt inspired by those men, and they were there because of violent crimes, but they were all about transformation. They were all about changing their lives. They were all about redemption in whatever way they could figure out. They taught English to people who came in with no English speaking ability. They helped people with their GED. They signed up for Suicide Watch, where they literally would sit in the cell with somebody who was in danger of harming themselves to that degree. They would do anything in terms of service. One man volunteered to be a translator, and we had men from, I think it was 4 or 5 different countries, Spanish-speaking countries. He volunteered to translate for 3 days for 4 or 5 men from 4 or 5 different countries. Spanish is not a homogeneous thing.
Right.
The accents are different, the
Right.
rhythm of it is different, the jokes are different, and he was exhausted. But that was his service.
Right. What is it about, what would you say it is about AVP that draws this out of people, or that it leads them into what are the principles of AVP that are so powerful?
AVP is all over the world. It's in, I should have looked up how many countries today, 30-some countries, I think 20-some states, maybe 30-some. I'm bad because the figures change.
So let me just say it again. It's the Alternative to Violence Project. And I think I have their I think it's AVP.
www.avpusa.org.
Okay.
And we don't have a local website. We have one, and nobody takes the time to update it. We'd rather be doing the work, and
Sure.
that'll come someday again. So currently, we're in the women's camp at Coleman Federal every month.
And what do you teach what do you teach to the women?
It's a 3-day workshop that addresses leadership development, communication skills, conflict management, how to work cooperatively in a group, how to follow instructions, time management, how to put yourself aside and actually care about somebody else, how to grieve, how to have conversations on the phone with somebody on the outside where you're appreciative of the fact that they're raising your children while you're incarcerated, even though their child rearing practices may not jive exactly with your own. So it's very broad what we do. And it started in 1975 in upstate New York in a prison. And the lifers there kind of got that the whole violence thing wasn't going so well. And so they got together and called in a group of Quakers who are the longest peace builders in the faith communities of America. And out of that has come the Alternatives to Violence Project.
So it's not just one person who came up with this idea.
No.
This is a group effort that has sort of evolved and built on the work of, well, the desire for people who are wanting to practice redemption and change their lives, and people who were practicing peace and had a deep knowledge of how that looks.
Yes,
And
and
what
that
that feels like.
collaboration led to what we have today. It's built on the work of Martin Luther King, Gandhian principles, and one of the threads that led to AVP as we know it today was Martin Luther King and one of the civil rights activists were visiting civil rights activists who had been incarcerated because of social justice protests. And some of that began to come into the workshops as well. So it's got a relatively short history in terms of, going all the way back to other peace movements, but it is now in lots and lots of places. In Florida, it has a Tampa Bay presence, a Miami presence, and in the past, it's been in Orlando, Gainesville, but at the moment, Miami and Tampa Bay are the strongest and the only really vibrant AVP centers. And we're starting with a group in Jacksonville, a group of Vets for Peace and the Jacksonville Quakers, to establish a chapter up there, which is very exciting for them and for us. Wonderful
That's great.
people.
So you can get trainings here in Tampa Bay area?
Occasionally, we offer community workshops. We've got one coming up in January, which may already be almost full. And if anybody wants more information about our community workshops, they can email me at cbbellamy4@gmail.com.
Okay, so that's CB Bellamy, Bellamy, the number 4@gmail.com.
Right.
Okay. And so it sounds like it's a combination of emotion, what we call emotional intelligence, listening skills, communication skills, assertiveness skills, and obviously more, and giving people an opportunity to really listen to themselves and find a way to be heard.
Yeah.
By being able to speak and articulate about what's happening inside of them, and having compassion for the person sitting across from you, to give you enough patience and to want to understand and know and have that compassion towards them, because you know that you're having that experience of having that given to you.
Mm-hmm. Some amazing things happen. Kind of like with you and your tree,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the guy at Omega with the dirt, kind of like Ramdas, where somebody connects with something outside themselves. In this case, it's with another human being, in a way that is, I would call spiritual. It's quite lovely. Sometimes we go through 2 boxes of Kleenex in a weekend. Sometimes we just have a lot of fun, because it's hard to have fun in a federal correctional facility without the correctional officers coming over and thinking you're being disruptive. But they give us a room and we close the door, and they basically leave us alone now, which is great. So we do an English speaking and a Spanish speaking workshop every weekend. We are there. And at any given time, up to 150 of the women have been trained in some aspect of ABP out of the 500 women there.
That's quite a legacy. Not only for the people who are there and then sharing that within the prison walls, but then after those folks go into the community and carry these skills with them. And that's such a huge part of their rehabilitation, but not even that, just a huge part about being human and being treated as human and carrying that out.
The
so different than the concept of punishment as being, transformative.
We don't even know what they've done. One of my favorite moments in the penitentiary was, we had a circle of about 28 men, and I was the only woman in the room. And one of the men got kind of agitated about something and went back to his street background and swore. And swearing was an agreement that we wouldn't do that because it would bring the street atmosphere into the ABP weekends. So he said a 4-letter word, and he turned to me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I just did that. I violated one of our agreements. I swore. I went back to old behaviors. Oh, please accept my apology." And the guy sitting next to him said, "Dude, you killed a couple people. All you did was swear. You didn't even swear at her."
Wow.
And he said, "Yeah, but my mama taught, do not be like that around women." And I am not that man who came into this place 20 years ago. I've been incarcerated for 20 years. I am a different human being now. Will you accept my apology? And they were trying to blow it off like it wasn't important. I got that was very important for him, because it represented the new guy that he said he was, but there it was. He didn't have to tell us. There it was.
Right. That new sense of morality.
Yeah.
With different, hugely, it's funny to say, hugely different boundaries. And calling himself and holding himself accountable.
Right. And the women's crimes are nonviolent, so sometimes we will have a pediatric dentist, CPAs, a couple of attorneys, some medical doctors, RNs, and a prostitute who considers herself equally professional. Shouldn't have letters behind her name, but maybe she ran a very nice little business. Might be just a housewife who got into selling illegal drugs. It could be anything. But with the women, we have some very well-educated women who are there because of white-collar crimes, paper crimes, tax evasion, tax fraud, things like that.
Okay. So where do you see this work going? I know that a couple of years back there was some some question as to whether or not you'd be able to continue, and you got past that hurdle.
Well, we got past that hurdle because I told the women one Friday afternoon, we have a council of facilitators that meets for an hour to oversee the work, and they're all trained.
And these are facilitators from within the prison. These are
Yes,
these are prisoners or women who are in prison.
Who have been trained,
trained,
as I have, and we work as a team, an outside facilitator and some inside facilitators, and so they get all kinds of leadership development when they become a part of those teams. So I had to tell the council that many of the people on the outside were no longer able to come in because of illness, because they had to do 2 jobs, because all the reasons that are difficult with volunteering. And to their credit, there was complete silence. They said nothing. But it was as though somebody had sucked all the air out of the room. Mm. And a couple of them literally looked like they might pass out, because this is very important to them and their experience there. And so I said, do you have any questions? Then they started problem solving. Well, have you tried this? And what about that? And I said, it's not about that. We tried everything. And those are great ideas. And we may not be able to continue. And I looked around the circle and I saw how they were going to make their life work no matter what while they were incarcerated. And they were going to dedicate themselves to this. So who was I to say going in once a month to keep this going was too much? So they didn't even say anything, and I got that I had to do it. That was my calling. Because I compared myself to them, and I looked pretty puny in comparison to what they were sacrificing on the inside in order to make things happen. So I'm in there once a month now, and I'm not great at all the details that have to be done. I'm the least likely person to handle the billions of details, but I do it, and they are very clear. They've got my back, and if I forget something, oh well, we get creative.
What do you mean when you say you're very puny in comparison to what they're experiencing? You mean that your sacrifice is that?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the way it feels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the 60-minute drive, the
hour and a half drive.
4 hours there, that hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
You're there for 3 days every time you go?
Yeah.
You're in prison for the whole weekend.
But not inside the prison. You
Right.
can't sleep there. You have to commit a crime to
Not
sleep
like your
there.
uncle.
No.
As close as you can get, though, Christina.
There is this lovely, incredible, generous farm woman who puts us up now she can't always do that, and sometimes we stay in a motel, but I get to stay in a farm and look out the window at the cows. Kind of nice.
Blessing.
Kind of nice.
Right.
It's quiet. You can see the stars.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some reward in there for you.
Oh yeah, and she completely believes in what we're doing.
How many people go with you?
Sometimes nobody, but sometimes I have some wonderful women who come. It doesn't work right now to bring men in. My husband would love to go. He and I went into the penitentiary many times together, but the workshops are held in the dorms, so they can't have men there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there issues around clearance? You have to get clearance to go and
Yes,
things
it
like
took
that?
me a year to get in, and I have no rap sheet. The paperwork and the efficiency of the federal correctional system is sometimes molasses slow, and the FBI gets involved, and that can slow it down even more. But once you get cleared, then you have your little badge, and you can go in.
And what's it like for you when you see somebody get it?
It's pretty glorious. It's just like when Ramdas got it. It's just like when you got your tree. It's like when I get something. There's this little light that goes off for us as human beings, and it's lovely. And it can be very simple. I parked my car to come up here today, and there was a woman in a wheelchair on the sidewalk, and she had a whole lot of makeup on. And she looked up at me. I smiled at her and I said hello. And she looked up at me and she said, "Don't I look pretty today?" And by Vogue standards, no. But there was beauty in her eyes, and she felt pretty. And that was the same kind of moment.
And it's that making that connection that
no different.
really sparks us off. And it's just about looking in each other's eyes sometimes and just recognizing one another. And I will say recognizing one another as the spirit, you know, because that's what it is. It's reflecting back and forth to ourselves. And we get lost so much up here that when we can, and we have those moments, it's not about thinking about it. It's about feeling it. It's about allowing that feeling in your heart to be known.
Yeah, not putting a block there.
Oh my gosh, you know,
like a pop-up block.
Yeah, Ram Dass would talk so much about, you know, the track that's going on in my head about judgments and this and that, and oh my gosh, look at all that makeup or blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I might have missed her. I might have missed her.
Or where do I need to be and how am I going to get there and all that stuff, and we miss the moment.
Yeah.
I talk about mindfulness on the program a lot, and what you're describing is just being mindful, being in the moment, being
it's
present.
A form of mindfulness. I would
it's
agree.
being present, and that's all mindfulness is, really. There's a practice called mindfulness, which is about practicing being present. You know, a way of meditating where you practice being present, but you're living being present.
I aspire to that every day.
Yeah.
And the 4 organizations that I'm involved with currently the most are blessing our community, I believe, in the same kind of ways that we've been talking about. ABP, certainly, in the prison and the community workshops. Tampa Bay Time Bank, which is helping over 500 members do all kinds of interesting things are at their disposal. Living Mirror Playback Theater, where we enact people's stories about their lives using improv. It's just
I will
fun.
find out more about that.
We
still have a little bit of time, so we're going to talk about that. And the other one is the Bridge of Tampa.
Yes.
The Bridge of Tampa. Let me just pause for a moment and remind everybody that we're here talking with Christina Bellamy and about her wonderful, powerful experiences in working with people who are incarcerated and being in the moment, really teaching people to be in the moment, and her connection with the earth. And this is DayQuest Life radio show. My name is Michael Whalen. You're listening to us on WSPF-DB, rhinoonair.com. And this is the time of the show for the poetry moment. So I found this really great little book, embossed and everything, that I think is destined for my niece, of Dickinson poems. Emily Dickinson, one of my favorite poets, and so connected with the earth. And so here's one. The pedigree of honey. The pedigree of honey does not concern the bee. A clover any time to him is aristocracy.
Yes.
The bee is not afraid of me. I know the butterfly. The pretty people in the woods receive me cordially. The brooks laugh louder when I come. The breezes madder play. Wherefore, mine eyes, thy silver mists? Wherefore, O summer's day? And I think I'll read one more of hers, a different vein. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. The two are one. We brethren are, he said. And so as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names.
Oh, nice. I've never heard that one. That's a beauty.
It's a great one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Emily Dickinson. Oh my gosh. We could go on, I'm sure. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about whatever it is you want to talk about next. Bridge, the Living Mirror Playback Theater, Tampa Bay Time.
Well, I've just got a couple more minutes.
We've got probably about 10 more minutes, I'm thinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we started a little bit late.
Okay. Well, the thing that I love about all four of these groups, and I plug into some other stuff when it presents itself too, but those are all ad hoc moments where I just, like a bee or a butterfly, just kind of drop in, and then I'm not a part of the thing ongoing. But these four, I'm a part of the thing ongoing, because they all call me about the work that's being done and the ways that our community is enhanced by what's going on.
Okay.
And the kind of leader I am is that I'm not a leader. I just align myself with teams of people that are doing interesting stuff. And that's what fills me up, not being the head of something, because I'm way not good at that. Probably my best quality is enthusiasm. And